I have this event forever scarred in my memory. Let me start with a bit of background leading up to that day. I was young in my career, well, compared to today at 40 plus years. I think I'd been working in the computer repair industry for almost 10 years at that point. I was running a tech support call center for a computer manufacturer, and they were having problems. 30% of the PCs were failing in the first 2 months. Something would happen that would erase the system board BIOS, the brains that start and run the PC itself. The PC was completely bricked. It couldn't even start up properly. The only way to fix it was to replace the complete system board, and that required an on-site service call and parts. Free for the customer, but an expense to the manufacturer. I sorted through thousands of service calls and reviewed hours of support desk data, and found the problem. The vendor making the system board had one jumper left in the manufacturing position. One jumper out of place put 100% of these computers at risk and a 30% failure rate. Then came that day. I walked into the office of the president of this computer company. I was carrying about a 4-inch thick printout of service data. Remember the 130 column tractor feed continuous form paper? Yeah, 4 inches of that. Thousands of service calls with the bad ones manually highlighted. I told the president about the failure rates, the cause, and asked how to notify the vendor so that they could change this jumper and eliminate the 30% failure rate. He waved his hand at my printout data. Then he said something like this: "Don't bother me with this. I hire responsible vendors. I don't need to manage them." 2 years later, this computer manufacturer was out of business. We need to talk about vendor management. Hi, I am Mark from Mentored by Mark T. Welcome to this channel and thank you for choosing to watch this video. Vendor management is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I will never forget that day when a half-penny fix could have saved that computer company hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the CEO didn't think he needed to manage his vendors. In my career, I have worked in the IT industry and in the payment card industry. I've been employed by vendors, I've had vendors working for me, I have worked with customers who have vendors. I've seen this topic from many sides. For the next 3 videos on this playlist, I want to focus on vendor management. Like your breathing or your heartbeat, vendor management looks very mundane, even boring, until something goes wrong. Have you ever experienced not being able to breathe? What about when your heartbeat goes crazy and won't slow down? The mundane suddenly becomes terrifying and ultimately important. In the same way, vendor management can be seen as mundane, even boring. However, vendors need to be managed very well to keep them from becoming terrifying and ultimately important emergency. I can't tell you how many times I have seen sloppy vendor management and the disasters that happen when vendors aren't managed well. What is a vendor? What a stupid question, eh? No, this may be one of the most important questions you have never answered. The implications of the answer to this question will shape how you do vendor management. Here is my short answer. A vendor is an entity that does work for you, but is not your employee. Let's break that sentence down into its component parts. A vendor is an entity. This entity may be an individual, a corporation, a government department, or another department in your company. An entity that does work for you. That work may be a service or a product. Do they answer phones for you, talk to customers for you, link to other service providers together for you? Do they make payment cards for you, send POS terminals to you, create marketing promotions for you, provide reports for you? Vendor can go under many names. Vendor, service provider, supplier, the store down the street, Joe over on 53rd Street. You get the idea. This entity is not your employee. This means they have their own employer. Their employer has its own goals, metrics, and ambitions. Their staff are measured by how they accomplish their employer's goals, metrics, and ambitions. You may be one of 1,000 customers, or they're one customer until they can get 1,000 customers. I will take 3 videos to fully unpack this definition. In this video, we will answer the question, who are my service providers? Employee, contractor, or vendor? It is critically important to understand the difference between employees, contractors, and vendors. Once again, this sounds like a stupid question. However, I've seen far too many people over the years show by their management style they have never answered this question. To be honest, while writing the script for this video, I struggled to define these terms. Here are my definitions. Let me know your thoughts and definitions in the comments below. Employee. Several dictionaries I referred to said an employee is an individual hired by a company for wages or salary. That is really generic and can actually apply equally to a contractor as well as an employee. If you change wages and salary to fee, you could be describing a one-person vendor as well. We need to find a better definition for employee. Here are my thoughts. An employee is hired into your company as an individual, not as a company. If you were to hire me as mentored by Mark T, you'd be taking me on as a consultant contractor. If you hired me as Mark, separate from my consulting business, you'd be hiring me as an employee. Your company has more responsibilities and rights over employees than over contractors or vendors. Your employee's performance is reviewed on a regular basis. Continued employment with your company depends on the employee meeting certain hurdles. In my experience, very few contractor and service provider contracts have these performance hurdles defined or monitored. Your employee's corporate loyalty is to one company, one boss, one manager. I guess the key word I'm looking for here is undistracted. Of the 3, employee, contractor, and vendor, your employees are the most focused on what you, their employer, want. What about contractors? Okay, I am a contractor. However, I want my comments here to be honest, maybe even blunt, but not cutting. Contractors are a company you employ as though they were an employee. You will typically hire a contractor for a specific project at your company. Contractors are typically hired for shorter duration than employees. But this last point has been warped recently as some companies have tried to avoid their responsibilities to their employees by making all their employees contractors. Maybe these employers don't realize that contractors go from one gig to the next. While contractors are working on a gig, they're also looking for an additional gig or the next gig. I will bring back my word, distracted. Contractors, by the nature of their business model, are distracted. I have seen contractors bail in the last weeks of their contracts. They seem to know they don't have future employment with the company. There are no penalty clauses in their contract for leaving before the project completes, as long as they give 30 days notice. As a contractor, let me comment on that last point. It takes a lot of personal discipline and integrity to finish a contract well. Many contracts are written to allow the hiring company flexibility to stretch the engagement to other needs and other projects. This is good for both parties, the contractor and the company, as they don't have to renegotiate the contract repeatedly. However, it does create ambiguity on when and how to best end the contract. Finishing well requires the following from the contractor and the hiring company: trust, clear communication, and a shared commitment to completing the project and contract well. As you can see, a contractor is different than an employee. Personally, I would consider a contractor a one-person vendor. Why? A vendor is a company you retain to provide one or more services or products to your company. Vendors are a company as well, so they have their own rules, goals, and metrics. Most vendors actively pursue additional business. They are distracted. It is very rare for a vendor to assign a specific person to a specific account as part of the service agreement. This means there will be a steady churn of vendor employees working with you as time goes on. In my experience, being a vendor, especially a service provider, is a very slim margin business. Profits come from scale and limiting customizations. There are some vendors who also chronically underperform. The cost savings they gain from this underperformance add to their slim profit margins. I will talk more about that in the last video on this playlist. As you can see, there are marked differences between employees on one side and contractors and vendors on the other side. Much more about this in the next 2 videos. So, who are my vendors? Question for you. Do you have a complete process flow map of all your business activities? No? Oh boy, you may be in more trouble than you know. Without a complete process flow map, you cannot identify all your vendors. Since my channel focuses on the payments industry, let's use my video, Where Does a Transaction Go?, as a sample business flow document. Are you a merchant, an acquirer, a processor, an issuer? Somewhere along the transaction path, the transaction will come from out there to in here. Who touches the transaction and its environment when it's in here? If you are a merchant, who provides your terminals, your point of sale application, your links to the payment networks, your transaction reporting? If you are an acquirer, who are your service merchant solution providers? Yes, your customers may also be your service providers. Who are the providers of your host services, your telecom services, your hardware you deploy to the merchants? Which payment networks do you connect to, and who is between you and them? Issuer. Where do your cardholder accounts reside? Who makes your cards? Who answers the phones when your cardholders call? Who handles your monthly statements? Which networks do you issue cards on? Now, to this list, add customer service providers, back office providers for chargebacks and fraud services, marketing and sales providers, accounting and finance providers, providers of legal services. This should get you started. The list goes on. Contact me if you need help identifying your vendors. Here's the next question. Do these people work for you? In other words, did you hire them as individuals? Do you do their annual review? Can you fire them or have them fired? If the answer to any of these is no, then they are a vendor. Even if it is another department in your corporate organization, if you don't have direct and unique control over their role, assignments, and performance, they are a vendor. Start making your list of vendors and what services and products they provide to you. Make the list as detailed as you can. You'll find some interesting anomalies in your list. You'll find frenemies. These are vendors who are also competitors in some form to your business. Note that. It is important. You'll identify teams inside your company too far removed from your business to be managed by you. These are vendors. They need a special type of management. There are vendors that are much larger than your company. They don't like to be managed, but you must manage them too. Some vendors have a monopoly in the industry. How do you manage a monopoly? There are some tiny vendors. Don't forget about them. Anybody big enough to work on your business needs to be managed. In my next video, we'll cover basic vendor management principles that you can apply to internal and external vendor partners in your business. For now, get to work on your list. The next 2 videos will be much more useful to you if you have done your homework from this video. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. If you have more questions about the payments industry, leave a message in the comments below. You can also contact me through my website, mentoredbymarkt.com, or via email, markt@mentoredbymarkt.com.